One early morning, this man named John was walking back to his cabin after a long, exhausting few days of prospecting. Out of nowhere, he froze in place when a heartbreaking howl ripped through the stillness. He quickly set down his camping gear and carefully moved closer, peeking through the thick brush. Right there in a small clearing stood a huge Alaskan timber wolf. Just imagine stumbling across an animal this massive, easily weighing 100 pounds. Her leg was stuck in a trap, and she was desperately trying to pull free. But after a few tries, she gave up and collapsed on the ground. She looked completely drained, like she had given up all hope. John was stunned to find her like this. His heart wanted to help, but as he stepped a little closer, the wolf panicked, tugging hard against the chains. She growled, her fur bristling up, but it seemed more from fear than true aggression. Not wanting to make things worse, John backed off. And that's when he noticed something that made his heart sink even more. She was clearly a female wolf, but that wasn't the shocking part. Her teats were full of milk. Somewhere nearby, helpless wolf pups were waiting for her, and without their mother, they wouldn't survive long. John knew if he was going to help reunite the babies with their mama, he had to move fast. But there was no way he could just walk up and set her free, not without risking serious injury. She was badly hurt, bleeding heavily from her trapped leg, and she didn't have much time left. If she was left there any longer, she'd die for sure. John wasn't about to let that happen. After everything he had been through in life, he had learned to never give up. And he sure wasn't about to start now, not with this brave, dying mama wolf. Every second he wasted could mean the end for her or her pups. He had to think fast. Trying to figure out how he could free her safely, John realized the wolf wasn't even moving anymore. She had fought so hard to escape, but now the blood loss and pain had overwhelmed her. He knew time had run out. He had to get her free and help her heal. Right now. Carefully, he reached out and touched her paw. She didn't even flinch. She was completely out of it. It was now or never. John grabbed his sleeping bag, threw it gently over her head, and carefully pulled it over her entire body. Hopefully, the sleeping bag would at least keep her calm enough while John worked to free her leg and get away safely. He pushed down hard on the trap's release button, but nothing happened. It was jammed. It looked like it had gotten bent when the mama wolf had fought to escape. John knew he had to get her loose fast or she wouldn't make it. He grabbed a rock and started slamming it against the trap's release. He kept hitting it until finally it snapped open. Without wasting a second, he wrapped the wolf tighter in the sleeping bag, lifted her up, and took off running toward his cabin as fast as he could. It wasn't easy, but John was a strong man. After about 50 minutes of hard running, he made it to the cabin. John laid the wolf gently next to the fireplace. She felt ice cold to the touch. Luckily, he already had a fire built. He just needed to light it. Once the cabin warmed up, he could take a closer look at her injuries. He grabbed his first aid kit, cleaned up the bloody wound, and stitched it carefully. Thanks to his medical training, he knew exactly what he was doing. He noticed her leg was broken too, so he straightened it and secured it with a splint to keep it still. If he had gotten there much later, she probably would have lost the leg. Now he just hoped he had gotten to her in time to save her life too. Slowly, she began to show tiny signs of life. John gave her a light sedative to keep her calm. The first time she let out a low growl at him, John actually smiled. It was the first real sign that she might pull through. She needed his help, but she still didn't trust him completely. Knowing she would eventually wake up, John decided it was safer to move her out of the cabin and into the shed out back. With the splint on her leg, she wouldn't be able to move around much anyway. After checking on the mama wolf and seeing she was looking a little better, John grabbed his bag and flashlight. It was time to find her babies. But where could he even start looking? He knew they couldn't be too far. A mother wolf never strays far from her pups. Even though John was just visiting Alaska before he had to ship out for the Second World War as a medic, he had plenty of survival and tracking experience. And now he was going to need every bit of it to save those tiny cubs. Without him, they didn't stand a chance. John searched the woods, moving quickly but carefully, scanning for any sign. Finally, he caught a lucky break. He spotted tracks leading back the way the mama wolf must have come from. It was at least a place to start. He climbed up the mountainside as fast as he could, being careful not to miss any clues that might lead to a hidden den. The tiny cubs were counting on him. As he hurried forward, something caught his eye. He quickly turned back to take a closer look. It was hidden pretty well, but there was a small opening in the ground. John hoped this was the den he had been looking for. Now the real challenge was getting the wolf puppies to come out. They had been taught to stay hidden until they heard their mother's voice, even if staying hidden could mean starving. But John wasn't about to give up. He gave his best shot at a wolf call. Nothing happened. He tried again, still no movement. He was just starting to think about the risks of crawling inside the den himself when suddenly a tiny little wolf pup poked its head out. It was crying from hunger, probably the only reason it dared come out without hearing its mama. After that first brave little one, the others followed soon after. They were small, but they were still wild little wolves. Knowing he couldn't carry them all safely in his arms, John gently placed each pup into his bag and zipped it closed to keep them safe. But before he could leave, he had to make sure there weren't any more left inside. It's never smart to stick your head into a wolf den with nothing but a flashlight for protection. But the thought of leaving one behind wasn't something John could live with. He lay down flat on his stomach, heart pounding, and crawled inside. Thankfully, the den wasn't as deep as he feared, but it was still dark and filled with the heavy smell of fear. Sweeping his flashlight around, he could see no more pups were left. Relieved, he grabbed the bag full of whimpering cubs and started heading back toward the cabin. It felt almost unreal, carrying a bag full of tiny wild wolves. As they got closer, the mama wolf must have heard her babies crying, because she started howling weakly from the shed. Carefully, John set the bag down and gently let the pups out one by one, hoping that his scent on them wouldn't cause their mother to reject them. If she didn't accept them, all his work would have been for nothing. The puppies immediately recognized their mother and ran straight to her. She sniffed them, and for a few tense moments, John held his breath. Would she accept them? His tough outdoorsman's heart melted when he saw her start licking the little ones. She lowered herself down, and within seconds, the pups were nursing happily. Her whole body relaxed as they fed, but John could see she was still in a lot of pain from her injured leg. He knew he would have to find a way to help her heal properly. If he didn't, she might lose her leg, and a wild wolf without a leg wouldn't survive for long. And without her, her babies wouldn't stand a chance either. Still, for now, there were bigger things to worry about. The mama wolf had been trapped for a long time. Now that she was feeding her babies too, she had to be both starving and badly dehydrated. For now, John needed to bring everything she needed straight to her. He remembered a spot where local hunters would store meat in the ice. They called it nature's cold storage. And everyone knew it was fair game if you really needed it. Feeding a wolf probably wasn't what they had in mind, but this was an emergency. John sliced off a big chunk of meat and tossed it toward the hungry timber wolf, piece by piece. She still didn't fully trust him, but she wasn't about to turn down food. She really didn't have a choice. He also filled a bowl with water and pushed it toward her using a stick. At least she wasn't growling at every little move he made anymore. John took that as a small win. But any time he tried to get closer to check her injured leg, she would still snap at him. Both John and the mama wolf were worn out after such a long, emotional day. To help her get used to him, John laid his sleeping bag as close as he dared, close enough to be nearby, but far enough to avoid waking up to a wolf clamped onto his arm. It took a long time for John to fall asleep, but the wolf pups had no trouble at all. Most of them curled up tightly against their mother. Except for the little girl pup, the first one who had come to him. She wriggled over and fell asleep right next to John. At least one of them fully trusted him. The next morning, John woke up with a pile of wiggling wolf pups climbing all over him. Not a bad way to start the day. But things were about to take a shocking turn. Every day, John had to leave the cabin to gather firewood and catch fish to feed the wolves. He always left the door open so the pups could wander in and out freely. What he didn't expect was for them to bring visitors. One afternoon when John came back, he got the shock of his life. His entire yard was filled with a pack of full-grown wolves. They had come to check on the mama wolf and her cubs. This must have been her family, the ones who had been searching for her all this time. For a second, John froze in fear. The puppies ran to him, tails wagging, happy as could be. But the adult wolves turned toward him, growling low, their fur standing on end. It looked like they were about to attack. Then, out of nowhere, the mama wolf barked loudly. Instantly, the other wolves backed down. Just like that, they relaxed. Their growling stopped, and the tension melted away. But John wasn't planning on hanging around and making friends with a whole pack of wolves. He moved fast, slipping into the cabin and closing the door tight behind him. The mama wolf still couldn't put weight on her injured leg, and the splint was still holding it steady. John was relieved to see that she and her puppies stayed close by. After just a few more days, John noticed she was feeling stronger. He wasn't sure how he was going to remove the splint when the time came, but she solved that problem herself by chewing through it. Pretty soon she was able to walk again, and with time she would even run like she used to. One morning she barked at the puppies, and they all got up and followed her. John understood immediately. They were leaving. It was goodbye. He sat down heavily, feeling a little heartbroken, wondering if he would ever see them again. But he didn't have to wonder for long. Just as he was sitting there sulking, he caught a movement at the door. It was the she-wolf. She barked at him, calling him to come with her. It felt surreal after everything they'd been through, but the bond they had built was real. Without knowing where she wanted to lead him, John grabbed his rifle and followed her. The puppies tumbled and played around his legs as they climbed the mountain nearby. After a little while, they reached a flat clearing, and the rest of the wolf pack came running up. At first, it made John's heart race, but the wolves didn't even seem to notice him. They were focused on welcoming the mama wolf and her pups back into the family. John quietly moved a little farther away and just watched from a safe distance. It was incredible to see them all together in such a beautiful spot. Somehow, it felt like the mama wolf had wanted to show him that her family meant no harm. It was a peaceful moment, one of the last peaceful moments John would hold on to for a very long time. He knew it was time to leave them behind for good. John started walking back down the mountain, but stopped and looked back. The she-wolf was standing there, watching him. He didn't know why, but he raised his hand in a small wave. Right then, she lifted her head and howled, a long, deep sound that echoed across the mountain. Her pups stood proudly beside her. John gave them one final glance, and when he looked again, they were gone. It was a bittersweet goodbye. After that, John stayed in Alaska for a little while longer, but nothing ever matched what he had experienced with those wolves. He knew deep down it was time to go home. His time in the wilderness had been a safe, happy bubble, but it was about to burst. Back home, things were grim. He wasn't there long before he was called to serve in the war. What followed were some of the darkest days of his life. Fighting in the war was nothing like the quiet beauty of Alaska. It was brutal and terrifying. John lost many friends and was forced to do things he never thought he was capable of. It was a living nightmare. Death felt like it was lurking around every corner. And one day, it got closer than he ever thought possible. As they were attacked from all sides, all John could think about was how much more decent and humane the wolves had been compared to the horrors of war. A grenade exploded near their group. The last thing John remembered before everything went black was a flash of the blue Alaskan skies and the sound of a wolf's howl calling out to him. Then there was nothing. John woke up in a hospital, his body screaming with pain. But even through the fog, he realized he was lucky. Another group of soldiers had been close enough to help, or none of them would have made it out alive. Even so, John had lost 2 close friends and had suffered serious injuries himself. His leg was badly hurt, and he had a severe concussion. He wouldn't be going back to the front lines, but he also wasn't going home just yet. First, there was a long road of treatment and healing ahead of him. It took months, but eventually he made it home. Only everything felt too small, too closed off. He couldn't stop thinking about that wolf's howl. It haunted him, but in a strange way, it also gave him hope. As soon as he was strong enough, John packed up and headed straight back to Alaska, the only place where he felt he could heal his broken heart and figure out whether he even wanted a future. He rented the same cabin he had lived in before. On his first day back, he went for a walk. He didn't know exactly what he was searching for, just that something deep inside was pulling him. He found himself back at the spot where he had first discovered the dying she-wolf. It was there he had saved her, and in a way, saved himself too. John climbed up the mountain, back to the place where he had said goodbye to the wolf family all those months ago. And there, standing alone with the memories, he broke down and cried for the first time. After everything he had seen and survived in the war, it felt like the world had ended. He didn't want to keep living. He sat there, rifle in hand, lost in his pain. Then everything changed. Over the ridge, a figure appeared, a wolf standing tall and proud, watching him. It was the she-wolf. Just like before, she lifted her head and began to howl. It was almost as if she recognized him. And then, out of nowhere, 4 younger wolves came and stood beside her. The pups he had once carried in a bag had grown into strong, beautiful wolves. Seeing them, seeing what he had saved, helped John heal some of the deep scars the war had left behind. In saving them, he had given them a future. And now, without even knowing it, they had given him a reason to keep living too. He could hold on to that memory, that pure, honest goodness, whenever the darkness tried to pull him under. It was one of the most special moments he would ever have, and he would treasure it for the rest of his life. Thanks for watching. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more incredible true stories. We can't wait to see you again next time.